The strategic importance of Norway in World War I was dictated by a discovery made in Berlin-Dahlem. In December 1938, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, working at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, identified that the uranium nucleus could be split when bombarded with neutrons. This process, nuclear fission, released energy according to the mass energy equivalence formula $= mc to $. By April 1939, the German War Office here Swaffenant established the Uhrenverein Uranium Club, led by Kurt Diebner and later Werner Heisenberg. The project aimed to harness nuclear energy for a uranium machine reactor. A critical technical hurdle emerged. Fission releases fast neutrons which must be slowed down moderated to sustain a chain reaction. The Germans tested two moderators, graphite and heavy water deuterium oxide $D2O in January 1940. Physicist Walther Bove conducted an experiment with graphite. Due to impurities boron in the samples, he concluded that graphite was unsuitable. This was a pivotal historical error. While the Americans under Enrico Fermi used pure graphite, the Nazi nuclear program became 100% dependent on heavy water. This made a single industrial plant in the mountains of occupied Norway the most important strategic target in the world. 1 to the citadel. Norsk Hydro at Vemork plant, situated near the town of Rjukan in Telemark, was a marvel of early 20th century engineering. Built by Norsk Hydro in 1911, it was the world's first mass producer of synthetic nitrogen. The plant was powered by the Rjukanfossen waterfall, which dropped 104 meters, driving 1014, 300 horsepower Pelton turbines. In 1934, a high-concentration electrolysis plant, the SH6-4O unit, was added. Heavy water is naturally present in ordinary water at a ratio of 1 to 6,500. Through repeated electrolysis, the concentration is increased. By 1939, Vemork was the only facility in the world producing $D2O on an industrial scale. Technical layout of the target: the hydrogen plant, an 8-story reinforced concrete structure, the high-concentration cell, located in the basement. This contained the 18 electrolysis cells essential for the final $D2O enrichment. Topography: the plant sat on a 600-foot-high rock shell. To the north was a vertical precipice, to the south the mountain wall. The only land access was a 75-meter suspension bridge over a 600-foot-deep gorge. 1.3 German occupation and the heavy water race. In April 9, 1940, Germany invaded Norway. Operation Weserbank. Shortly after the fall of Oslo, representatives from Igfarben arrived at Norsk Hydro. They demanded that production of heavy water be increased to 1,500 kilograms per year. Professor Leif Tronstad, a Norwegian scientist and intelligence officer who had helped design the SH640 cells, immediately recognized the danger. He began a dual life, cooperating with the Germans by day and organizing sabotage through the Norwegian resistance by night. In 1941, Tronstad escaped to Great Britain, bringing with him detailed blueprints of the plant and intelligence that the Germans were building a uranium machine at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. 1 For Operation Grass, the advance party in London, the Special Operations Executive and the Norwegian Independent Company 1. Company Lynch took charge. The plan was a 2-stage assault. First, a small Norwegian advance party would land on the Hardangervidda Plateau to secure a landing zone. On October 18, 1942, for Norwegians Jens Anton Paulsen leader Knut Hogland radio, Claus Helberg, and Arne Kjelstra parachuted onto the plateau, equipment and logistics of Team Grass, radios, 3 BMKE sets with hand-cranked generators, arms, Sten guns 9mm, Colt 1911 pistols, .45 ACP, and MKE pineapple grenades, survival gear, reindeer skin sleeping bags, skis, and concentrated rations. They landed in a blizzard, miles from their target. For weeks, they moved 500 kilograms of equipment across the most desolate terrain in Europe. When their food ran out, they survived by eating reindeer moss lichen and the contents of a reindeer's stomach to prevent scurvy. Despite the conditions, they successfully set up the Rebecca Eureka radio beacon to guide the British gliders. For the next phase, Operation Freshman. 1.5 Operation Freshman. The November disaster on November 19, 1942, the British launched Operation Freshman. To Handley Page Halifax bombers, each towing an airspeed Horsa glider, took off from Skitton, Scotland. Each glider carried 15 sappers from the 261st Field Park Company, Royal Engineers. The mission was a catastrophe of weather and navigation. Glider encountered severe icing. The tow rope snapped over Rogallan. The glider crashed into a mountain. 8 men died instantly. Glider B. The Halifax bomber crashed into a mountain at Hestadfiel, killing all 7 crew members. The glider crash-landed nearby. The Commando Order Kommandobefehl. General Nikolaus von Falkenhorst, commander of German forces in Norway, implemented Hitler's secret decree. Of the 23 survivors of the Freshman crashes, none were treated as POWs. Those who were not killed by the Gestapo during interrogation were taken to the woods and executed. This event alerted the Germans, who then reinforced Vemmerk with barbed wire minefields and 24-hour patrols by the SS-WACHBATAILLON. 6. The birth of Operation Gunner Sidith. Failure of Freshman proved that a large-scale glider assault was impossible. The SO decided on a smaller, all-Norwegian commando team. This was Operation GUNNERSID. 6 more Norwegians were selected, led by 23-year-old Joachim Rundberg. They were trained at STS-61 in the Scottish Highlands, where a full-scale wooden replica of the Vemmerk electrolysis basement had been built. The Gunnerside team members: Joachim Rundberg leader, demolition expert Knut Hockelid second in command, local knowledge Kasper Eidland 4, Frederick Kaiserhen Storhogberger Sturmscheintraining and gear. Their training included silent killing, night skiing, and blind explosives placement. They were issued cyanide L pills. If captured, they were ordered to kill themselves, as they possessed top-secret knowledge of the Allied tube alloys project. Specific weaponry: Sten MKE, 9mm submachine guns with SILENC RS. Fairburn Sykes fighting knives for silent elimination of sentries, explosives, plastic explosive pay-to-shape charges, designed specifically to wrap around the cylindrical electrolysis cells. On the night of February 16, 1943, the team boarded a converted Handley Page Halifax at RAF Tempsford. They were about to jump into a blizzard over the Hardanger Vida, aiming to join the Grouse team and execute the most important sabotage mission of World War E. Step 2. Visual Prompts and Search Queries. Part 1. Timming Visual Content. Prompt Search Query. Archival footage 0 o'clock to 2. Whole close-up of uranium atoms splitting. 1930s lab equipment. Otto Hahn photo. Nuclear fission discovery. 1938 archive. Otto Hahn Laboratory Berlin 2 o'clock 5 o'clock wide shot of Vemmerk plant 1940s. Rücken waterfall. Hydroelectric turbines. VEMORK plant 1940 archive. Norsk Hydro Rücken historical footage 5 o'clock to 8. German troops marching in Oslo. Wehrmacht 163rd Division Igfarben documents. German invasion Norway 1940 footage. Wehrmacht in Telemark 194,008 to 0 to 11 o'clock paratroopers jumping into clouds. Handley Page Halifax in flight. Winter Survival. SOE Training Scotland Archive. Handley Page Halifax takeoff WWI 11 o'clock to 14 o'clock wreckage of airspeed Horsa glider and snow. Gestapo officers, Commando Order document, airspeed Horsa glider wreckage Norway. Operation Freshman crash site. Step 3. Top 3 titles race for the Nazi atomic bomb. Operation Gunner Sedevmork. The fortress that almost won the war for Hitler's heavy water sabotage. How 11 men stopped the German nuclear project. Step 4. Description, hashtags, and tags. Description. In 1943, a group of Norwegian commandos embarked on a suicide mission mission to sabotage the Wehrmacht heavy water plant. This documentary covers the technical details of the German nuclear program, the failure of Operation Freshman, and the heroic survival of Team Grouse on the Hardanger Witte Plateau. Authentic archival footage and detailed chronological analysis. HASHTAGS. We documentary Operation Innerside History Militaristory 15 tags. We World War II documentary. Heavy Water Wehrmacht, Norway Sabotage, so. Special Operations Executive, Nazi Atomic Bomb, Joachim Rundberg, Norsk Hydro, Operation Freshman. Military History, Hardanger Witte, Atomic Race. On the night of February 16, 1943, the 6 men of the gunnerside team parachuted from a Hanley Page Halifax into a severe blizzard. They landed at Skryken, approximately 30 miles from the Grouse team's position. Due to the storm, it took 5 days of brutal cross-country skiing through deep snow with 60-pound packs to locate the advance party. On February 23, the 2 teams met at a remote mountain hut. The Grouse team, now renamed Swallow, was in a state of physical emaciation, having survived for months on the plateau. After a brief period of recovery and final reconnaissance, Joachim Rundberg finalized the assault plan. Intelligence confirmed that the Germans had reinforced the bridge with searchlights and double sentries. A direct assault on the suspension bridge was deemed suicidal. To the descent into the gorge. February 27, 1943, Rundberg made a high-risk tactical decision. The team would descend into the 600-foot deep River Gorge, cross the frozen river, and climb the sheer rock face on the other side to reach the plant. This route was considered so physically impossible that the Germans had left it virtually unguarded. Timing of the raid, 20 o'clock. The team left their base, skiing to within 2 miles of the plant, 23:30. The descent began. Using ropes and ice axes, the 11 men navigated the frozen precipice, 0:30. The team reached the valley floor, crossed the ice, and began the vertical ascent toward the railway tracks leading into the plant. 2.3 The infiltration and explosive Placamente team followed a single-track railway line to enter the plant perimeter. Using heavy-duty wire cutters, they breached the chain-link fence. The assault split. The covering party, 5 men led by Knut Hakelid, took up positions around the guard huts and the barracks, armed with Sten guns and grenades. Their orders were to engage the SS guards only if the demolition party was discovered. The demolition party, led by Joachim Rundberg, for men searched for an entry point. They found all doors locked. Following intelligence provided by Leif Tronstad, they located a narrow cable tunnel, the cable duct, leading directly into the high-concentration basement. Technical sabotage. Rundberg and Frederick Kaiser crawled through the 30-meter tunnel and dropped into the electrolysis room. They found only one person, a Norwegian night watchman. While Kaiser held the watchman at gunpoint, Rundberg began placing the pay to plastic explosives. The charges were specifically designed donut rings, shaped to fit perfectly around the 18 stainless steel electrolysis cells. The high-concentration batteries. Each charge was linked with a dual detonator system to ensure zero failure. 2 point for the explosion and the Sten gun clue. At approximately 1:15, Rundberg lit the 30-second fuses. As the commandos sprinted toward the exit, a dull thud shook the building. The explosion was not loud enough to alert the guards in the barracks over the roar of the plant's machinery, but it was sufficient to shatter the reinforced steel casings of the cells. Over 500 kilograms, 100 pounds of heavy water, the entire production stock of the plant spilled onto the floor and disappeared into the drains. The specialized electrolysis equipment was destroyed beyond immediate repair before leaving. Rundberg deliberately left a British-made Sten gun on the floor. This was a strategic psychological warfare move. It proved to the Germans that this was an Allied military operation, thereby preventing the execution of local Norwegian civilians, as retaliation for what might have been seen as a local resistance act. 5 The Great Escape. For 100 kilometers on Skisby, the time the sirens sounded at Wehrmacht, the commandos were already descending back into the gorge. The German commander, General von Falkenhorst, arrived at the plant shortly after and famously remarked, "This is the finest coup I have seen in this war." The team split up to maximize their chances of survival. the main group 5 men, led by Ehrenberg. They embarked on a 400-kilometer, 250-mile trek across the mountains toward neutral Sweden. They skied in full British uniforms to ensure they would be treated as POWs if captured, rather than spies. Despite a massive German manhunt involving 3,000 Wehrmacht troops, they reached the Swedish border after 14 days. The Telemark Group, Knut Håkelid and the others remained in Norway to continue organizing the resistance and monitoring the plant status. The sabotage of Operation Gunnerside delayed the German atomic project by at least 6 months, a critical window that allowed the Allies to further their lead in the Manhattan Project. Step 2. Visual prompts and search queries. Part 2. Timing visual content. Prompt search query. Archival footage 14 o'clock to 18 o'clock. Soldiers skiing in blizzards, silhouettes against snow. Hardangervidda Plateau. Norwegian commandos skiing. We archive. Hardangervidda winter footage 18 o'clock to 22. Close-up of Sten gun, P2 explosives. Diagrams of electrolysis cells. Stan and KE submachine gun archive. Wehrmacht electrolysis cell diagram 22 o'clock to 26. Night shot of the Magorge, the suspension bridge. The railway track entry. VEMORK suspension bridge historical. Rücken Gorge winter 26 minutes and 0 seconds to 30 minutes and 0 seconds internal shot of damaged machinery. Spilled liquid on concrete floor. Sabotaged factory equipment. We archive. Wehrmacht interior damage 194,330 0 to 35 minutes and 0 seconds map of Norway showing the escape route to Sweden for 100 kilometers trek. Closing parenthesis. GUNNERSID escape route map. Swedish border. We archive. Step 3. Top 3 titles. Gorge of Death. The night they destroyed Hitler's atomic dream. Sabotage at Wehrmacht. 11 commandos versus 3,000 Nazi soldiers. Operation Gunnerside. The most successful raid of World War I. Step 4. Description, hashtags, and tags. Description. Part 2 of our deep dive into the heavy water war. Witness the tactical brilliance of the Gunnerside raid. The 600-foot descent into the Magorge, the silent infiltration of the Norsk hydro plant, and the technical destruction of the SH-6 electrolysis units. We detail the 400 kilometers escape to Sweden and the psychological impact on the German high command. Hashtags. Militaristory WW to Operation Gunnerside Commandos Documentary 15 tags. Operation Gunnerside. Joachim Ehrenberg, Knut Håkelid, Wehrmacht sabotage. Heavy water. Nazi nuclear program. So missions. Norwegian resistance. Telemark Magorge 1943. Sabotage tactics. Wehrmacht WWI Norway. Special forces. Step 5. Preview image text. Option 1. The impossible climb. Wehrmacht raid. Option 2. Destroying the Nazi bomb. Option 3. 400 kilometers escape. Surviving the SS. The failure of Operation Gunnerside to permanently halt production led to a strategic shift in Allied command. By May 1943, intelligence reports from the Norwegian underground, specifically from the Chaser team, indicated that the German SH-6 electrolysis units at Wehrmacht had been repaired with components shipped from IG Farben's plants in Ludwigshafen. General Nikolaus von Falkenhorst had transformed the Rücken Valley into a fortress. The 163rd Infantry Division deployed a mountain battalion around the plant, supported by 20mm flak-Vierling 38 anti-aircraft batteries on the surrounding heights. The suspension bridge was rigged with demolition charges, and the Magorge was monitored by high-intensity carbon arc searchlights. On November 16, 1943, the U.S. 8th Air Force launched Mission 131, a massive formation of 143 B-17 flying fortresses from the 3rd Bombardment Division, targeted the Telemark region between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. The bombers released 711 500-pound general-purpose bombs from an altitude of 12,000 feet. The technical result was mixed. While the massive reinforced concrete ceilings of the electrolysis plant, which were nearly 2 meters thick, remained intact, the hydroelectric power station and the penstock pipes were decimated. Over 120 bombs hit the plant perimeter and several strayed into the civilian areas of Rücken, causing 21 civilian deaths. This This strategic pressure forced the German Reich Ministry of Armaments, led by Albert Speer, to conclude that heavy water production in occupied Norway was no longer sustainable. The decision was made to dismantle the existing stocks and transport the remaining 15,000 liters of heavy water to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. The logistics of the evacuation relied on the Rjukanbanen Railway and the SF Hydro, a steam-powered railway ferry built in 1914. The heavy water was stored in 39 large industrial canisters and loaded into specialized railway tank cars. On February 19, 1944, the containers arrived at the Mli ferry terminal. Knut Hakelid, acting on direct orders from the SO in London, recognized that this was the final opportunity to intercept the shipment. Hakelid and his team, including Rolf Sørlie and Knut Lear Hansen, conducted a night reconnaissance of the ferry while it was docked. They found the security surprisingly light. Only 2 German guards were on duty, and they were distracted by the cold. Hakelid constructed a specialized time bomb using 19 pounds of British pay-to-plastic explosive, a high-velocity RDX-based compound, to ensure detonation. He utilized 2 separate alarm clock timing mechanisms linked to electric detonators. The bomb was placed in the bow of the SF Hydro, specifically against the internal hull plates below the waterline. The technical intent was to create a massive hole at the front of the vessel, so that water pressure would flood the hull rapidly as the ship moved forward, ensuring it would capsize and sink in deep water. At 10 a.m. on February 20, 1944, the SF Hydro departed Mli for its 30-kilometer crossing of Lake Tinsk. On board were 53 individuals, including 14 German soldiers and 39 Norwegian civilians and crew. At 10:45 a.m., as the ferry reached the deepest point of the lake, where the floor drops to 430 meters, the timers reached 0. The explosion tore a hole approximately 3.5 square meters in the bow. Within 5 minutes, the ferry capsized. The railway cars containing the heavy water broke their lashings and slid into the freezing water. Because the heavy water canisters were only partially full, the air pockets were insufficient to counteract the weight of the steel, and the railway cars they sank immediately to a depth where recovery with 1940s technology was physically impossible. The loss of the 15,000 liters of heavy water was the definitive death blow to the Nazi nuclear program. In April 1945, the Allied USO's mission, led by Colonel Boris Pash, captured the secret BV research reactor in a cave under Haigerle. They found 660 for uranium cubes, but the reactor was non-functional. Werner Heisenberg later testified during the farm hall interrogations that the lack of heavy water from Norway was the single most important factor that prevented Germany from achieving a self-sustaining chain reaction. The sinking of the SF Hydro ensured that even if the Third Reich had the theoretical knowledge, they lacked the physical moderator required to build an atomic weapon before the fall of Berlin. The failure of Operation Gunnerside to permanently halt production led to a strategic shift in Allied command. By May 1943, intelligence reports from the Norwegian underground indicated that the German SH-6 electrolysis units at Vemmerk had been repaired with components shipped from Ig Farben's plants. General Nikolaus von Falkenhorst transformed the Rjukan Valley into a fortress. The 163rd Infantry Division deployed a mountain battalion around the plant, supported by 20mm flak Vierling 38 anti-aircraft batteries on the surrounding heights. The suspension bridge was rigged with demolition charges, and the Magorge was monitored by high-intensity carbon arc searchlights. On November 16, 1943, the U.S. 8th Air Force launched Mission 131, a formation of 143 B-17 Flying Fortresses from the 3rd Bombardment Division, targeted the Telemark region between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. The bombers released 711 500-pound general-purpose bombs from an altitude of 12,000 feet, while the 2-meter-thick reinforced concrete ceilings of the electrolysis plant remained intact. The hydroelectric power station and the penstock pipes were decimated. Over 120 bombs hit the plant perimeter, and several strayed into the civilian areas of Rjukan, causing 21 civilian deaths. This strategic pressure forced the German Reich Ministry of Armaments, scientists led by Albert Speer to conclude that heavy water production in occupied Norway was no longer sustainable. The decision was made to dismantle the existing stocks and transport the remaining 15,000 liters of heavy water to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. The logistics of the evacuation relied on the Rjukanbanen Railway and the SF Hydro, a steam-powered railway ferry built in 1914. The heavy water was stored in 39 industrial canisters and loaded into two specialized railway tank cars. On February 19, 1944, the containers arrived at the Mli ferry terminal. Knut Hakelid, acting on orders from the SO, recognized that this was the final opportunity to intercept the shipment. Hakelid and his team, including Rolf Sørlie and Knut Lear Hansen, conducted a night reconnaissance of the ferry while it was docked. They found the security light. Only 2 German guards were on duty. Hakelid constructed a specialized time bomb using 19 pounds of British pay-to-plastic explosive. He utilized 2 separate alarm clock timing mechanisms linked to electric detonators. The bomb was placed in the bow of the SF Hydro, specifically against the internal hull plates below the waterline. The technical intent was to create a massive hole at the front of the vessel, so that water pressure would flood the hull rapidly as the ship moved forward, ensuring it would capsize and sink in deep water. At 10 a.m. on February 20, 1944, the SF Hydro departed Mli for its 30-kilometer crossing of Lake Tinsk. On board were 53 individuals, including 14 German soldiers and 39 Norwegian civilians and crew. At 10:45 a.m., as the ferry reached the deepest point of the lake, where the floor drops to 430 meters, the timers reached 0. The explosion tore a hole approximately 3.5 square meters in the bow. Within 5 minutes, the ferry capsized. The railway cars containing the heavy water broke their lashings and slid into the freezing water. Because the heavy water canisters were only partially full, the air pockets were insufficient to counteract the weight of the steel, and the railway cars they sank immediately to a depth where recovery was physically impossible. The loss of the 15,000 liters of heavy water was the definitive death blow to the Nazi nuclear program. In April 1945, the Allied ULSO's mission captured the secret BV research reactor in a cave under Haigerloch. They found 660 free uranium cubes, but the reactor was non-functional. Werner Heisenberg later testified during the farm hall interrogations that the lack of heavy water from Norway was the single most important factor that prevented Germany from achieving a self-sustaining chain reaction. The sinking of the SF Hydro ensured that even if the Third Reich had the theoretical knowledge, they lacked the physical moderator required to build an atomic weapon before the fall of Berlin. Stap 20 o'clock 5 o'clock B-17 Raid Rücken 1943 Archive 8th Air Force Mission 131 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock So Sabotage Equipment Archive Pay-to Plastic Explosive We 10 o'clock to 15 o'clock SF Hydro Ferry Historical Photos Rjukanbanen Railway Archive 15 o'clock to 20 o'clock Haigerloch Reactor 1945 Footage Heisenberg Uranium Cubes Step 3 The Final Blow Sinking the Nazi Atomic Program Lake Tinsk The Deepest Secret of World War I Target SF Hydro The Last Mission of the Heavy Water War Step for Description Final part of the Vemmerk Saga Detail on the 1943 Air Raid and the sabotage of the SF Hydro ferry. Hashtags We Militaristory Documentary Nuclearis Special Forces Tags SF Hydro Lake Tinskjo Knut Hakelid Heavy Water Nazi Atomic Bomb Vemmerk Rücken Werner Heisenberg Haigerloch B-17 So Sabotage Military History 1944 Atomic Research Step 5 Sinking Hitler's Bomb 430 meters underwater The End Final Sabotage SFF Hydro The technical specifications of the containers transported on the SF Hydro were critical to the mission's success. The heavy water was housed in galvanized steel canisters, each reinforced with internal bracing to withstand the vibration of rail transit. Concentrations varied from 1.5% to 98% $D/$. The most valuable canisters were the 18 units from the final electrolysis stages, when the 19-pound pay-to-charge detonated. The hydraulic shockwave was magnified by the surrounding water, causing an immediate structural failure of the ferry's hull plates. As the SF Hydro settled, The internal air pressure in the railway cars caused them to burst before they reached a depth of 50 meters, ensuring that the canisters were scattered across the silt of the lake bed at a depth where the pressure reached 43 atmos/phes. Following the sinking, the German Uhrenverein attempted to salvage the mission by concentrating their remaining domestic stocks at the Hürtgen laboratory. The BV reactor assembly consisted of 664 uranium cubes, each weighing to 0.45 kilograms, suspended by chains in a magnesium alloy tank. To reach criticality, the reactor required approximately 1.5 tons of heavy water. The final shipment from Wehrmacht would have provided the necessary volume to exceed the multiplication factor $K equals $1. Without it, the German experiments remained subcritical $K equals 71 cents, preventing the development of a self-sustaining pile and the subsequent production of plutonium-239. The strategic impact was confirmed through the Operation Epsilon transcripts. In 1945, 10 leading German scientists, including Werner Heisenberg and Otto Hahn, were detained at Farm Hall in England. The rooms were microphoned. Upon hearing the news of the Hiroshima bombing, the recorded conversations revealed that the German scientists had vastly overestimated the amount of $U-35 required for a bomb, because they had never been able to verify their calculations. With a functioning heavy water reactor, the sabotage in Norway had denied them the experimental data necessary to realize that a weapon was feasible with a much smaller mass. In 2005, a specialized salvage team utilized a remotely operated vehicle row to explore the wreck of the SF Hydro. They recovered one of the original canisters from a depth of 430 meters. Scientific analysis confirmed the contents were still 1.1% $D2, proving that the sabotage had successfully neutralized the material for over 60 years. This archaeological evidence stands as the final physical verification of the mission's success. The Wehrmacht's sabotage remains a textbook example of how small unit special operations, combined with precise scientific intelligence, can achieve strategic effects equivalent to several army divisions. Step 25 minutes and 0 seconds close-up of Rove exploring SF Hydro wreck. Heavy water canister recovery, 25 minutes and 0 seconds to 30 minutes and 0 seconds Farm Hall transcripts. German scientists in detention 1945, 30 minutes and 0 seconds to 35 minutes and 0 seconds technical diagrams of the BV uranium cube lattice, 35 minutes and 0 seconds to 40 minutes and 0 seconds modern footage of the Hürtgen Industrial Museum and electrolysis cells. Step 3 Farm Hall. The secret recordings of Hitler's scientists recovering the canister, the 430-meter deep evidenceth final calculation, why Germany failed to build the bomb. Step for description. The final chapter, technical analysis of the BV reactor, the Farm Hall transcripts, and the 2005 recovery of heavy water from the bottom of Lake TINSJ.HASHTAGS. Nuclear history WW to science history Operation Innerside history documentaries. Farm Hall Operation Epsilon Werner Heisenberg Otto Hahn BV reactor Rove SF Hydro wreck heavy water uranium cubes nuclear physics we intelligence Hürtgen telemark so Manhattan Project. Step 5 The Farm Hall secrets recovering the canister why Hitler failed. The following technical segment focuses on the German countermeasures, the heavy water chemistry details, and the psychological warfare aspects of the mission. The security failure at Wehrmacht led to a radical restructuring of the German high protection Hochschutz protocols across all industrial sites in occupied Norway. General von Falkenhorst commissioned the construction of a specialized armored train to patrol the Rjukanbanen line, equipped with NG-30 machine guns and 20mm flak mounts. The Germans also implemented a collective responsibility decree, stating that for every act of sabotage, 50 prominent local citizens would be executed. However, the so countered this by intensifying Operation Sunshine, which involved the infiltration of specialized stay-behind agents, equipped with the Type 3 Mark E Beta suitcase radio. These agents provided real-time meteorological data for Allied bombers, and monitored the arrival of any specialized salvage equipment from the Baltic ports. From a chemical perspective, the heavy water at Vemork was produced through a complex cascaded electrolysis process,